Africa should be rich because we are a very rich continent. Mobile was really designed for Africa. That's the best place to use mobile communications. Power corrupts. We decided really to focus on something which nobody was touching, the issue of governance in Africa. That was a challenging moment for us. We are Africans. This is African money. Nobody can complain. Whenever there's a big gap between perception and reality, there is a wonderful business opportunity.
It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Mo Ibrahim Foundation's Leadership Ceremony.
Welcome to Abidjan. It is wonderful to have you here with us tonight.
Mo was a good friend of my late father and a man for whom my father had immense respect.
We need to rebrand Africa.
Mo Ibrahim's success comes from his vision, his ability to see what was possible.
We need to show there is life after office.
He has a passion about governance and leadership.
We're discussing some really important issues for Africa.
There's no country today in Africa that doesn't want to be in that rating of Mo's foundation.
Europe cannot succeed if Africa fails. Most people know that now.
The Ibrahim Prize works in two ways. It's not just a great thing if you receive it. It's a terrifying thing if you don't.
I was born in Halfa in Sudan. My father worked in Egypt, so I grew up and did my schooling in Alexandria, Egypt. That's why I love the Mediterranean. I mean, the smell of the sea is amazing. Normal childhood in a third world country. We lived modestly, and I was one of 5.
He's Sudanese. It's a very ancient people, very dignified. But actually, when he takes the boxing gloves off, he's very warm.
I had a very happy childhood. I recall also fondly my late mother, who was very adamant that we focus in education. She has this obsession with education as the most important thing. And it is one way out of poverty. I love science, and I wanted to be a scientist. I had no plans at all or idea that I'm going to end up being a businessman. I don't know, because of my social background, we always suspect businessmen. I mean, we assume businessmen are crooks. We respect professions, you know. You need to be a doctor, engineer, to earn honest money.
He's one man all the way through in many ways, you know. I mean, my dad he's a mathematician and a scientist, really, at his core.
And he'll always find a solution, a practical solution to a problem.
I ended up being an accidental businessman. So this is not by choice, actually. I was fascinated by the concept of mobile communication and mobility.
They are more convenient than regular telephones, but...
This strange propagation of radio waves going around the streets and canyons, and I saw that as an interesting challenge, and that's what I decided to do.
And it's the moment where the world is going to go from landlines to wireless phones. And he is at the right moment, in the right spot for this dramatic transformation.
British Telecom got a license from the government to develop a mobile network. So they asked me to join them as technical director.
Mo is at British Telecom in the early 80s, and this is just as BT is privatizing.
It was an interesting proposition for me because as an engineer now suddenly, you know, we're like kids, you know, we love to play with train sets. And now I have a big train set, you know, around the whole country to play with. So I designed the first mobile network in UK.
I think when he was at British Telecom, he might have half invented the mobile phone. really, because he's a scientist underneath it all.
So it's no surprise that he's finding that this institution is still very bureaucratic, even as it's trying to change.
So what do you do when you get fed up working in a large company and the bureaucracy? You say, okay, I'm going to be a consultant, so I want to be free.
He leaves BT to start Mobile Systems International, MSI.
I went home, my dining room, I said, okay, this is going to be my office, I'm going to work from here.
It was one room, there was the dining table, and there was the sofa and the TV. We're all in one big room.
To my amazement, I got so much work, I really could not cope with it. So I said, I need some people to work with me. We ended up with like 900 engineers, and we had 16 offices worldwide. We became the largest independent technology company in Europe.
He creates, develops, trademarks a software that goes on to be used by Motorola and Siemens. He never expected that something that he started in his dining room would be so successful.
When we sold the company a few years later, some 33% of the shares were in the hand of my people, not the senior management, not myself, the hand of my engineers and software people, etc. And that was a great, wonderful experience. But I found really the most important thing is just the common sense. That's all what is needed, really, to do business. And never afraid of saying, I don't know.
He's very Irish. I mean, for a Sudanese dude, he does feel like family in a certain sense.
Bono is amazing. He's my Irish brother.
And there's a lot of arguing, argy-bargy. And I think Irish people like that, you know. Mo's never met an argument he didn't like.
What people said to him was, don't touch Africa. Africa's so corrupt.
Mobile was really designed for Africa. That's the best place to use mobile communications.
In the University of Ghana once, I was in the crowd, and he held this crowd. He was a great speaker. But at one point, I think one of them came up and said, would you take a photograph?
I said, fine, I mean, gave you the phone, I took your photos. I said, no, you gave the phone to Bono. I said, Bono, I said, you take the photo of us. I said, this is a famous rock star. I said, no, it doesn't matter. Can you please just take the photo of us?
And then they handed me the camera and put their arm around Mo.
Bono was humble.
He's a superstar. He's the rock star in the room.
But it's good for those rock stars also to be humble sometimes. To be able to laugh at yourself is great. MSI was a success story, and I don't know why we succeeded or what happened. I had enough money then to be comfortable. So when we went to Africa to do CellTel, I believed it was going to be a successful business, but I didn't realize it was going to be that hugely successful.
So this engineer who thought he was never going to be a business person discovers there's an even bigger and better business to do besides his mobile phone consultancy: deployment of wireless networks in Africa.
He smells the coffee. He understands that the new infrastructure of the continent's not even roads or power. It's mobile telephony, and the internet is the superhighway, and the trucks and the cars are these phones, and they're going to change everything.
All of Africa had about 3 million telephone lines at the time. This is landlines. We said, okay, what's going to happen? Africa really needs mobile communication. It is not the right technology to service Africa by using landlines. It's just too expensive and it cannot be protected. Mobile was really designed for Africa. That's the best place to use mobile communications. A friend of mine, who's also one of my customers, I said, you know, the Ugandan government contacted us and they really want to offer a mobile license, cellular license. They need that, and it's for free, you know. And he said to me, you want me to go to my board and advise them to invest in Uganda? This country, you know, they have this terrible man, Idi Amin, running the country. I said, excuse me, Idi Amin left 15 years ago.
Amin had proclaimed himself president for life, but for now, he doesn't have power or a country.
This is the perception of Africa, unfortunately. And that really was a wake-up call for me.
I remember Mo talking about launching his Celtel company, and what people said to him was, don't touch Africa. Africa's so corrupt.
I'm an African. I'm not afraid of Africa. I believe there is a big gap between perception and the reality of Africa. Whenever there is a big gap between perception and reality, there is a wonderful business opportunity.
I met Mo in '98, immediately after he started Celtel, in a room full of investors. It was quite interesting to watch him go from person to person, introducing himself as Mo, please call me Mo.
He just knew that he could do it, and the way that he thinks that is because he thinks longer and harder than anybody I know.
If I need to build a mobile network in UK and France, all what I need to do is to build the mobility layer. It's just the towers and the exchanges. And the infrastructure is provided by the incumbent. In Africa, there's nothing like that. So that's one big problem. We have to build all the infrastructure ourselves. I have to put in the microwave, the fiber, to connect the towers to the exchanges. All these thousands of radio towers, they need power, and they need power 24 hours. So I have to have a generator in every tower. Then I need to have a backup to the generator, and then I need to have batteries for emergency. I need somebody to go every morning to supply fuel. It is a tough job really to go and do it. That was a huge challenge for us at the operational level of the company. Second challenge we had was typically you get at least 50% funding from the banks, loans, etc. We could not get any. We have to build the company with equity.
It happened that telecom was a sector where you could put quite a bit of capital and get a very rapid return given the spread of this technology in a population who did not have fixed telephone lines.
When we sold the company 7 years later, we had no debt. There's no telecom company in the world which had no debt. We in Africa have to build the company with equity, with our money, because the banks will not touch us.
It was a moment, it was a sector, and Mo had the flair, had the nose to jump into that and to realize that he could grow a huge business.
No one had wanted to start a wireless company in Africa. And then lo and behold, nearly 10 years later, everyone is clamoring to buy the wireless network that he created. And he sells it for more than $3 billion.
We did not understand the whole economic and social changes bringing to the whole continent. We were not that smart to foresee that. I wish we were.
On exit, his greatest points of joy was to be able to say, wow, we've created over 189 multimillionaires who participated in building the business and should, of course, share in the upside of the business.
But that was the tip of the iceberg, because there's no viable banking systems or credit cards or even postal addresses in many areas. This means that millions of people every morning have to go and buy scratch cards. So suddenly all these little shops started to appear. We had something like 400,000 selling points. These are 400,000 entrepreneurs. This guy started with a little kiosk by the side of the road. And after a month, there'll be some oranges and some bananas also, and then some Pepsi or Coke. Suddenly, this guy have a business which was built in mobile phones.
That has actually opened up a lot of things, you know, people especially from rural areas where they have never seen a phone before.
Do you think about the continent of Africa as leapfrogging even quite modern technologies like the telephone into this whole other system of banking, system of communication, and yeah, so facilitating this tech revolution, which turbocharged transparency.
What people using is mobile phones to tell the world what's happening. It's really a huge, important tool for democratization and human rights in Africa.
As an African, he was so much concerned to the people of Africa. So he wanted to sacrifice his own money to serve these people of the continent.
And he makes a giant fortune. And he thinks, I don't need all of this. What'll I do with it? And again, he invests it in governance and this idea that if we reward people for doing the good things, we may not have to punish them for doing the bad.
The first Mo Ibrahim Prize for Achievement in African Leadership has been announced in London.
I am delighted to announce that the winner is Festus Gotambanyi Mohai.
President Pedro Verona Pires is a worthy winner of the 2011 Ibrahim Prize.
Hifikepunye Pohamba is the winner of the 2014 prestigious Mohammed Ibrahim.
The power in Liberia today rests where it should.
I remember very well when I first met Mo. It was at a business lunch. Mo literally headhunted me. He, saw me out of the room, said, "Can I give you a lift back to your hotel? I really need to talk to you." And he began by talking about this foundation that he wanted to establish for African leadership.
I know a lot of wonderful people doing great things, whether it's medicine and, Bill Gates and Melinda are doing a wonderful job, and I love them to bits. Giving blankets, baby milk, family planning, whatever. My view is slightly different in that why African people need aid in the first place.
So he's justice more than charity. When your geography is set against you as you attempt to find dignity in your life, that's a matter of justice. That's his anger. Your dress should not be your destiny.
Africa should be rich because we are a very rich continent, huge continent. We have all these resources. So why are we poor? The answer was clearly the way we run our countries.
He knows that if Africa had its governance, there'd be enough domestic resources to pay all their own bills.
So that's why we decided really to focus on something which nobody was touching, the issue of governance in Africa and the issue of leadership in Africa.
And there's that sort of angry pride in him. He says, we will do this for ourselves.
We are Africans. This is African money. Nobody can complain.
Domestic resource mobilization is the game, but corruption is the obstacle in the way of it. But there is a vaccine for corruption. It's transparency.
We say we need a score sheet for every country. Governance is measurable. What is governance? Governance is about delivery of public good, delivery of education, health, safety, security.
We believe that assessing outputs and outcomes of policy, not measuring legislation, is the most useful way to measure governance in Africa.
When I was in office, I was always looking into Mo Ibrahim Index and compare myself with my peers and see where I am and try to design a program where I can improve.
In every big multinational that's now looking to invest in Africa somewhere, the first thing they will look at is this big book with all this data. And I can tell you this will have a big influence on whether they do it or not.
It becomes a guiding tool for many of us. It was for me.
Brothers and sisters, it is wonderful to have a winner this year.
The prize was clever because it was the sexy part of the foundation.
The prize really is an acknowledgement of courageous and decent leadership in Africa, because it's important to have the leaders who can really move things forward. I mean, you look at people like Mandela, they come at a crucial time and they do the right things, and that can change the whole makeup of a country.
That was the one issue, the prize, that I had a slight, problem because I thought that Mo was putting it at far too high a level. I mean, why have a prize, that is bigger than the Nobel Prize? And I said this to him, and he explained two things. He said, first of all, governance is beyond price. Good leadership and governance is beyond price. And secondly, Mary, in Africa, if you have a corrupt leader, they'll make far more than this prize.
We are looking for heroes, people who came and did the right thing and left, not because of the prize, because that is what they're doing. This is $5 million and $200,000 for life. So it's just enough to let people live decently and go on doing some good stuff for Africa. European leaders, American leaders, anybody, they become rich after they leave office, actually, because every bank in the world want them on their board. They go on the speech circuit, they make a lot of money. Our guys have none of this. So what do you do after office? If you are a good leader and clean, you leave an office, you are penniless. We say, no, we want you to go around Africa now, to go around country, speak to the school kids, tell them your story. This is a wonderful thing, to free those people because of the prize money. They don't need to work, and they now work for Africa.
As the first woman to receive this award, it is my hope that women and girls across Africa will be inspired.
I'm trying to remember where I was when I received the phone call that I had been selected.
To break through barriers, to push back the frontiers of possibilities.
And I received the call and I said, wow, I didn't expect it.
I think it's true to say that the prize committee, on occasion, has not given the prize when Mo thought we would. And it almost embarrassed him that we didn't give the prize, because we've actually recognized that we must be very strict in the criteria.
Power corrupts. I have seen many African leaders come to office very well-meaning. They live in a bubble, and they start to grow this crazy idea about being indispensable, by being extremely wise. And we say, excuse me, some humility, please.
Because he takes on leaders, sometimes in ways that surprises all of us. He's become a hero to people at the grassroots level.
Mo is the only African that I know that will come out and tell our leaders the hard truth. He's very fearless, and he always stands by what he said, because he always says the truth.
If we don't say what we think, what is our value?
This notion that you cannot remain in power too long, that you should not use public funding for your own purpose, that corruption has to be addressed, that the rule of law is something which matters. I think Mo will have sort of solidified this part of the future of Africa.
He's fighting with headwind, so that makes him to be a brave person, and he's really a brave African.
I think an African Nubian who tried really to be good to our people, to do something good. I don't know if I succeeded or not, but I think I'm trying.
And yes, there's been hills to climb, some of them very steep, personally, politically, probably has put his life in danger. But I don't think Mo feels brave. Mo feels blessed.
I don't think if my dad walked down the street, you would know who he was. Then or now, or how much money he had, or how successful he was.
Really, if he was art, I would call him a masterpiece.
He really, really passionately believes in the future of the continent, future of his own country, Sudan. That's what gets him up in the morning. It's quite clear.
I'd like to think I was, Robin to his Batman. But I think in reality, I'm more, is it Alfred, the butler? I just I'm his roadie.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Be brave. Be brave. Be brave.